Well, I've got the old school modus out. It must be serious, huh? No, not really, guys. Just a demonstration of a simple way that you can actually capture stall data. Sometimes a ball breaker on a car can be that it just stalls out the blue with no rhyme or reason. You start running down the probable or possible causes for what could actually stall the car completely. Well, it would be nice if you could actually use your scope data in order to actually capture that moment. The problem is, unless you're there, you actually capture the occurrence, it's going to be problematic in order to see it on screen. Unless you use a particular mode with respect to the trigger. I'll get to that momentarily here, guys. I've demonstrated this video in the past, and I actually used the fuel pump current as the trigger. Can you imagine if there's a stall event, guys? If this engine actually were to stall, clearly the crank position sensor is no longer going to be telling the engine control module the engine's running, no rotation, no engine rotation, stop the fuel pump. Right. Now, I showed you how to do that in the past with the fuel pump current, which is a great way of doing it. And you can do that, guys. It's very effective. However, no, everybody has a current clamp. All I've got set up here is a single channel at the moment here, guys. By the way, this demonstration is predicated on the fact that you'll need at least a 2-channel scope in order for this to be of any value to you. At least 2-channel. This is going to help you capture that data. But you're going to need to be able to define a transition of some sort. What you can see here is all I've done here, guys, is actually gone from battery positive. I'm on the ground there. And you can see my battery looks pretty healthy here. I just ran it a short time ago. That's probably likely a wee bit of surface charge, but that's fine. That's neither here nor there. And it's currently reading 12.5. I have quite a long time base on here, guys. Snap-on does the entire screen, not per division. So it's a 5-second screen. Maybe you can see the trace actually going across here. And I have this long time base in the interest of making the demonstration clear. The battery statically is always going to be in and around 12.7 volts, guys. Let's say 12.5 volts for simplicity, unless the alternator is running, right? So where's it going to go when the alternator is running? Well, we don't need to guess. So this is the current, min, and max values. Let's just start the car. It's going to drop the min value for sure as the starter loads the battery. And I'm pretty sure we're going to see an increase in this to, I don't know, what do you think, 14 volts, 14.4-ish? You can see we have 14.4, 14.5-ish. You can see the line is actually jumped up on the voltage scaling here. And again, I mentioned the time base earlier. Right, so what will happen if the engine actually stalls? Well, by definition, if there's no longer any rotation, the alternator is not going to be able to put out this voltage, and we're going to go back to static battery voltage, yeah? Let me make a correction or clarification here, guys, with respect to the trigger modes, right? The auto, normal, and as I said, some other scopes will have single. Now, the auto is pretty clear. It just triggers all the time, no matter what. The normal, what it will do is wait for an occurrence where you cross the trigger, as I mentioned, in the direction of the slope that you've selected, and it will hold that image. However, in normal, if there's another occurrence where it actually happens again, the scope will trigger again and capture that image. The distinction between normal and single or one-shot operation is right in the brochure, guys. One shot or single, meaning you'll only get the one occurrence crossing the threshold or the trigger, and it will capture that and will not change again. Unlike the normal, it will continue to update so long as there is a crossing of the trigger in the slope dictated in your selection. And I'm going to adjust my trigger level here. That is actually the trigger level right there. So I'm going to adjust the trigger. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to, so 14, again, 14.4 is the operational voltage, let's call it, operating voltage level. So I'm going to come down on my trigger, I'm going to call it 13.2, knowing that the battery will go to 12.7-ish when it's in a static condition, i.e. the engine is no longer running, right? So let me just stall the car here. All right, so I think you could clearly hear the car stalling there. It's currently showing 12.7, and this is no longer updating, guys. What does this mean? Well, this screen here actually shows us, and it's holding the data when the alternator cut out, i.e. the engine stopped running. Again, the engine by definition can't be running if we're now sitting at battery voltage, assuming you have a healthy alternator. We know that the voltage is going to transition from alternator output, i.e. 14.4, 14.5-ish, to static battery voltage, 12.5-ish. If we set the trigger between those 2 points, we can capture this frame at the time of shutdown. If we haven't a single trigger, or in the case of the snap-on, the normal trigger, it will hold that frame. What's going to cause a stall? Possibly the fuel pump, possibly the ignition, possibly the igniters, the injectors, possibly the crank position sensing, the cam position sensing. What's going to stall the engine completely, guys? Not drop a cylinder, but stall the engine completely, because that's what we actually have, right? What I'm doing is monitoring the far side, not the voltage supply, but the voltage out of the fuse to the fuel pump relay. Okay, but what I've done is I've stripped the insulation here just a wee bit. Don't know if you can see it. Let me show you. Right, so I can actually just use it as a test point as well. I can pick off the voltage easily. Let's go to normal. Okay, so that data is not being captured real time now, guys. It's waiting for us to meet the threshold of channel 1, the yellow channel voltage dropping below this point, i.e. the car is stalling, right? Okay, so let's just go ahead and simulate a fault. Not just the fuel pump, one for the fuel injection system. It all comes off of this fuse. That's why it didn't taper off, it just died instantly. Okay, so let me just quickly step through these frames here. So everything's normal. We have a failure. Keep an eye on the alternator output, the line. It crosses the threshold, at which point in time the scope stops capturing the data. It captures a few additional frames after the fact, but after that, we're done. That is the last frame. Why is this important? So you can actually find the frame where the failure actually occurred, the little yellow index there on the timeline here, guys, in the case of the Modus, and you can actually review your stall data. And you can see clearly here what actually caused this car to fail right there. That's what induced the stall in the car. You now have your causation of the issue. Now, there's tons of cars out there, guys, that guys will troubleshoot for forever and a day because they cannot nail down the cause. This is a very effective way to actually nail down the cause. I'll say it again. The more channels that your scope has, and I have a little Handtech scope which has actually up to 8 channels and would do just fine in this scenario, where I could monitor simultaneously crank, cam, fuel pump, fuse, the injector circuit, 1,000,001 things that might actually cause the car to actually stall outright. Keeping in mind that the car, something has to be something that's common and going to cause a complete shutdown in the car. The other issue to be careful with here is actually the slope. Now, appreciate, guys, if I had this in the rising slope mode of operation, I could be sitting here all day long and the stall could occur, but I wouldn't capture it because I'm in the wrong direction. Of course, the voltage, when the alternator is operating, the car stalls, the alternator ceases to have any output, It's the falling slope, which I'm set up for, which is going to trigger the scope to capture. If this was in the rising mode, rising slope, nothing would capture and you've lost your opportunity and it might not reoccur. So you want to make sure you're in the right slope mode as well. Extremely important. Okay, that's time, boys. That's it. Cheers.